Chapter 21, The Clearwater Dock. This ordeal of Sun Mingming's was destined to be nothing more than a false alarm. Even without Pian Ran's help, she likely would have been unharmed. Yet, here Pian Ran was, standing at the entrance of the underground warehouse where Sun Mingming was being held. She had already changed out of her dress, tied up her hair, and disguised herself in plain clothing. She managed to sneak into the warehouse with relative ease and, after searching for a while, found a tightly shut wooden door. Just as she was about to try picking the lock, she heard voices approaching. She quickly hid herself behind a stack of crates. Moments later, footsteps entered the warehouse. "Boss, the girl's been brought in, she's inside," someone reported. "Good. Let me have a word with Miss Sun," came a low, deliberate voice. "That must be Yushin." Pian Ran cautiously peeked out and saw three men enter. They were dressed in simple clothes, short jackets and long pants. One had his sleeves rolled up, revealing sun-darkened arms. The man in front was tall and broad-shouldered, with strikingly sharp features. He walked straight to the door, opened it, and stepped inside with the others. Pian Ran crept closer and peered through the doorway. There, on a wooden bed inside the room, lay Sun Mingming, unconscious, seemingly drugged. "Hozi, wake her up," Yushin commanded. A short man stepped forward and held a small porcelain bottle beneath Sun Mingming's nose. Before long, she stirred and let out a breath, slowly opening her eyes. Where am I? What happened?" she asked groggily. A deep voice replied, "Miss Sun, I apologize for inviting you here in such a discourteous manner. I had no other choice. I hope you won't take it to heart." Who are you people?" she asked, her senses returning as she looked at the three unfamiliar men, wariness rising in her eyes. She touched her aching forehead, trying hard to remember what had happened. She had been shopping, surrounded by a group of beggars. Out of pity, she had just reached for her coin pouch to offer money when a wave of dizziness struck, and everything went dark after that. "What do you want from me?" she demanded, eyes wide with fear. These men had clearly kidnapped her. "There's no need to be afraid, Miss Sun," Yushin replied calmly. "We won't harm you, but I'm afraid you'll need to stay here for a little while." "What? No way." Sun Mingming jumped up and glanced around. "Let me go right now. My brother will never let you get away with this." Yushin's eyes flashed coldly for a brief second before returning to their calm state. The man called Hozi stepped forward and roughly shoved Sun Mingming to the ground. "Still think you're some pampered young lady? Don't throw tantrums here. That won't work on us," he snapped. What are you going to do to me?" Sun Mingming sobbed, holding her bruised hip. Her voice trembled. "What do we want?" Hozi sneered. "Why don't you ask your dear brother what he's done? He's left us no way to survive. Now you'll pay the price." "Hozi!" Yushin's voice cut in sharply. Only then did Hozi withdraw his glare. Sun Mingming, curled up on the ground, was terrified. She had never seen anything like this before. Spoiled and protected all her life, always getting what she wanted, she had no idea how to deal with such cruelty. Fear had taken over her completely. "Wait," Yushin said, after a pause. "Wasn't there another girl with her? Why wasn't she brought in?" "Luhu and Jiabao sent word. Said she slipped away. Too clever for them," another man muttered. "Want me to send a team to look for her?" "No," Yushin waved him off. "She's not important, as long as we have Miss Sun. But what if she runs to inform someone? That's why we need to act quickly," Yushin replied. "Danlei, go make the arrangements. We must be cautious. No mistakes." "Yes, boss." "Hozi, watch her closely. But don't mistreat her. Understood?" "Don't worry, boss. She won't get away." Hozi cracked his knuckles, veins bulging on his muscular arms. "Miss Sun," Yushin said with a measured voice, "believe me, I have no desire to hurt you. As long as you cooperate, you'll be safe." Sun Mingming stole a fearful glance at Hozi and whispered, When will you let me go?" "That," Yushin said with a faint smile, "depends entirely on your brother." With a signal to the others, the three men exited the room. Pian Ran had hidden herself once again. Once the men left the warehouse, she emerged and headed for the door. She heard muffled sobs from within. Glancing around, she finally spotted a slender wire in a corner. She bent over the lock, inserted the wire, and pressed her ear against the wood, eyes closed. Slowly, she turned the wire. A faint click echoed inside the lock. Her eyes opened. The lock snapped open with a soft sound. She slipped inside. Sun Mingming looked like a frightened bird, staring in shock. "Pian Ran. Sister Pian Ran?" she said, eyes wide, her tear-streaked face filled with disbelief. It took a moment for her to recognize Pian Ran. Pian Ran put a finger to her lips. She led her to the bed and whispered, "Don't make a sound. Don't cry. You'll be fine." "You came to save me?" Sun Mingming asked, trembling. "I can't take you out yet." "Why not?" "I don't want to stay here. I'm scared." That man, his eyes were terrifying, like he wanted to kill me. "Please take me away," she cried, clinging to Pian Ran's sleeve. Pian Ran sighed inwardly. This girl had clearly been overprotected, completely unprepared for even the smallest danger. "Do you know who those men were?" she asked gently. Sun Mingming shook her head. "I've never seen them before. This is Clearwater Dock. The man in charge is called Yushin. From what I heard, he seems to have a grudge against your brother. Do you know anything about it?" "Clearwater Dock? Yushin? No, my brother's never mentioned him," she said, still shaking her head. Her brother never talked business with her, and she had never asked. As expected, Pian Ran had guessed as much. Sun Woohan had kept his sister shielded from everything. But if that were the case, it raised more questions. How had they managed to abduct Sun Mingming so easily? Was Sun Woohan truly that careless? Everything she'd heard about him, from the admiration of the Su sisters to the deep affection of Liu Yuan and the respect from the people of Qianma City, told her that Sun Woohan was no ordinary man. Something about this didn't add up. She decided to wait and observe before making a move. "Miss Sun, I can't get you out yet," Pian Ran repeated. Sun Mingming's eyes welled with tears again, but Pian Ran gripped her arm gently. "Just do as I say, and I promise you'll return to the city safe and sound." But Pian Ran leaned close and whispered something in her ear. Sun Mingming frowned. "Why do I have to do that? Just trust me. Don't cry. Don't make a scene. Pretend this is your own home," Pian Ran said calmly. "But will they really let me go if I do that?" Sun Mingming asked nervously. Yes, Pianran replied, though she didn't say it aloud. She was sure of one thing, these men never intended to harm her. She was only a hostage, a bargaining chip against Sun Woohan. Okay, Sun Mingming finally agreed. Oddly enough, though she hadn't known Pianran long, she trusted her completely. Maybe it was her calmness, it made her feel safe, and her fear began to ease. I'll go for now. Just stay put, Pianran said, standing up. Where are you going? Sun Mingming asked, clutching her sleeve again. I'm not leaving the dock. I just need to confirm something. All right, Sun Mingming slowly let go. Her voice was much softer now, and her lively spirit seemed to have faded. Perhaps this experience would help her grow. I'll do as you say. But please come back for me soon, she whispered. I will. Pianran nodded, then added, and don't forget, you are Sun Woohan's sister, the daughter of the city lord. They wouldn't dare harm you. Especially that Hosey, he only shouts loudly because he's afraid of your brother. I understand. Sun Mingming nodded. Her fear finally vanished. That's right, she was the city lord's sister. Her brother was the powerful and respected Sun Woohan. Why should she fear these common thugs? Pianran looked at her one last time, eyes glinting. Little girl, don't blame me. This is just a small bit of payback. Chapter 22, Sun Woohan, the city lord's mansion. As night fell, 2 large crimson lanterns were lit at the gates of the mansion, casting a warm red glow across the entrance. Outside, a small sedan chair carried by 2 hurried bearers arrived. Before it had even come to a complete stop, a stunning woman lifted the yellow-fringed curtain and stepped out in haste, none other than Liu Yin. The 4 guards at the gate, dressed in blue robes, bowed in greeting without further question. Clearly, the young lady of the Liu family was a familiar and frequent visitor. Liu Yin walked swiftly through the halls, passing corridor after corridor, until she reached Yimingxian, the study of Sun Woohan. As she entered, she caught sight of a tall figure standing by the window with his back to her. Who else could it be but Sun Woohan himself? Woohan, she called, her voice anxious. What's going on? Where is Menger? Ah. In her urgency, she tripped over the threshold and nearly fell. Fortunately, Sun Woohan turned just in time to catch her. Careful, he said gently. His long, steady hands held her by the shoulders and helped her stand upright. When she looked up, it was no surprise to see an extraordinarily handsome face, arched brows, star-like eyes, a straight nose, and lips curved with a trace of a smile, each feature seemingly crafted by the heavens. What woman wouldn't be moved by such a man? Yuan, are you all right? He asked. A faint blush rose to her cheeks as she stepped away from his hands. I'm fine, but tell me, what happened? Why is Menger missing? Sun Woohan let out a sigh, his brows slightly furrowed. That girl. I've truly spoiled her. She used to know her way home. Now she's decided to stay out all night? You mean she hasn't returned yet? Lu Yuan asked in alarm. No. She said this morning she was heading to the Lu residence. I assumed she'd be with you and wouldn't wander off, but now it's already late, and she's nowhere to be found. I thought she was with you, but it turns out she never arrived. How can this be? Weren't there guards escorting her? Those fools, Sun Woohan said coldly. They lost track of her before midday and didn't even report it. They searched half the day in secret before they dared come to me. I've already punished them according to the rules. I summoned you here to ask about the circumstances under which Mingming left your estate. It's my fault, Liu Yuan said, guilt in her voice. I should have kept her there. One of the maidservants was leaving the residence, and for some reason Menger insisted on going with her. If I had known this would happen, I would have stopped her. One of your maidservants? Sun Woohan asked suddenly. Liu Yuan hesitated, puzzled by his interest, but answered anyway. Yes. A very ordinary girl. She had only been in the household for 2 or 3 days before she asked to leave. Since she hadn't signed a contract, we let her go. Mingming is becoming more willful than ever, Sun Woohan muttered. What did she find so interesting about a maid that she'd insist on following her? She's just a child. Curiosity is normal, Liu Yuan replied lightly. But don't scold her when she returns, or I won't be pleased. She flashed a playful glance at him, her tone half joking, half serious. Sun Woohan raised an eyebrow and smiled faintly. You make it sound like I'm an outsider. What nonsense, she said, flustered, quickly looking away from his teasing gaze. But how did Mingming suddenly go missing? She asked again, concern returning to her voice. The guard said she was browsing the market when, in the blink of an eye, she vanished. At first, they thought she had slipped away on purpose again, but now that there's still no sign of her, I'm beginning to think something has happened. Surely not? In a city like Qianma, who wouldn't recognize the daughter of the city lord's mansion? Who would dare lay hands on her? She's always acted recklessly, thinking my favor would shield her from everything. Maybe a little lesson isn't such a bad thing. You let her suffer. Liu Yuan looked at him incredulously. He had always doted on his sister far beyond reason, even she couldn't help but feel a twinge of envy sometimes. There was no way he would stand by and let her get hurt. True enough, Sun Woohan gave a faint smile and said, only if I permit it. But what now? Have you searched all her usual haunts? Yes. We've looked everywhere, no trace. Sun Woohan rubbed his chin thoughtfully, falling into silence. What if something really has happened to her? Liu Yuan asked, her worry deepening. If we can find the maid from your residence, we might find a clue. That girl? Liu Yuan frowned. For reasons she couldn't explain, she disliked how much attention Sun Woohan paid to Pianran, even if it was for Mingming's sake. Yes, that maid was likely the last person to see Mingming. She might know something. That's another reason I asked you here. You want to find her? But she's not even from Qianma. I have no idea where she went. Ever since Pianran had helped her investigate the thief case, Liu Yuan had inquired about her background and found, shockingly, that her origins were unknown. Housekeeper Lu Quan had admitted with a helpless smile that the girl seemed ordinary at first glance, but had the cunning of a fox. Is that so? The Lu family taking in someone with no known background as a maid. That's quite unusual, Sun Woohan remarked with a subtle smile. Blame Uncle Lu. He let his guard down under a few sweet words from that girl. I see. Sun Woohan chuckled but dropped the subject. Then he said, could you draw her likeness for me? It might help us find Mingming. Draw her? Liu Yuan was visibly reluctant. She, the daughter of the Lu family, sketching a servant girl? It felt beneath her status. Sensing her hesitation, conversation, Sun Woohan added, time is pressing, and only you can help. Your skill in painting is unmatched. It won't be difficult for you. Fine. For Mingming's sake, I'll do it. Sun Woohan nodded, satisfied. He guided her to sit before his desk while he stood nearby with hands clasped behind his back, quietly waiting. Before long, a lifelike sketch emerged. As Sun Woohan looked at the image, particularly at the calm, composed gaze of the girl, he felt a strange stir in his heart. Why did she seem so familiar? Her appearance was unremarkable, far less striking than Lu Yuan's, yet he couldn't take his eyes off her. There was something about that face, so ordinary it bordered on cold, that compelled him to look deeper, as if trying to uncover some hidden memory. But he was certain he'd never seen her before. So where did this sense of familiarity come from? Lu Yuan, having just set down her brush and blown lightly on the ink to dry it, noticed his fixed gaze and frowned. Woohan, what is it? Nothing, he replied quickly, turning away. I don't think you should pin your hopes on that maid, she said. You know how childish Mingming is, she may have followed the maid on a whim. That girl is peculiar and secretive. I doubt she knows anything. They probably went their separate ways as soon as they left the estate. Perhaps, Sun Woohan said, unmoved. But she was the last to see Mingming. Even if she knows nothing, I need to speak with her myself. His tone left no room for argument. Once Sun Woohan set his mind on something, even Lu Yuan, who shared a special bond with him, couldn't change it. You should return for now. I'll send word if we learn anything. All right. Lu Yuan nodded, walking toward the door. She paused, turned back, and said gently, don't worry too much. Mingming is a fortunate girl. She'll be fine. Just take care of yourself. The city lord's mansion needs you. I will, he replied quietly. Glancing at her, he asked, shall I see you off? She hesitated, then said, no need. My carriage is waiting outside. You focus on your duties. Though she longed for more time with him, this wasn't the right moment. She didn't want to be a burden. Very well, Sun Woohan said simply. He called someone to escort her from the estate and returned to his study alone. He knew someone had already been waiting for him there. Chapter 23, The Man in the Golden Robe. So? Send off your delicate little fiancé already? A voice tinged with amusement echoed in the room. Who said she's my fiancé? Sun Woohan replied flatly, showing no surprise at the sudden appearance of a strikingly handsome man clad in a golden robe. Very few people knew about the hidden passage to his study, and this man was one of them. Isn't she? The lady's already offering up spiritual treasures like chi harmonizing pills and golden core elixirs as part of her dowry. I thought you've been coveting those for ages. TSK. Just accept your fate, my friend. Beauty and treasure, both delivered to your doorstep. What's not to love? If I want something, I'll get it myself. What's so special about a gift handed over freely? Sun Woohan snorted, clearly unimpressed. The golden-robed man chuckled. So you truly feel nothing for that dazzling Miss Lu? He clearly enjoyed provoking others, but unfortunately, Sun Woohan was not one to be provoked. If you came here just to spout this nonsense, then I suggest you leave. Guards, he called, his voice calm but commanding. Two guards in blue uniforms immediately entered, their sharp eyes locked on the golden-robed man like hounds awaiting their master's signal. Whoa, easy there. I was only joking. No need to take it so seriously. The golden-robed man turned to the guards and waved them off. Relax, boys, don't interrupt my heartfelt conversation with your master. But the guards stood firm, ignoring his orders, eyes cold and ready to strike. Hey, aren't you going to call off your men? Or do I have to start throwing gold ingots around? The man, Jin Wushu, glanced at Sun Woohan, who said nothing. Instead, Sun Woohan picked up a painting from his desk and instructed, post this portrait across the city. A hefty reward will be given for any information regarding her whereabouts. Those with leads may come to the city lord's mansion to claim their reward. A portrait? Whose portrait? Jin Wushu leaned in curiously. He took a look over Sun Woohan's shoulder, finding the face vaguely familiar. After thinking for a moment, he asked, a maid from the Lu residence? Yes, Sun Woohan replied coolly. What? Don't tell me you've taken a fancy to her? Jin Wushu teased. Why else would he have a portrait of a maid? Sun Woohan shot him a glare but didn't respond. He simply handed the portrait to his guards and ordered, see to it immediately. Yes, sir. The guards responded and left with the painting. You're still here? Sun Woohan returned to his desk, visibly annoyed. Jin Wushu gave an awkward smile. Come now, Sun Woohan, I brought you some information. Is this how you treat a generous messenger? You'd better pray your news is worth my time, Sun Woohan replied coldly, or I won't hesitate to have you tossed out. Jin Wushu rolled his eyes. Yes, your secret guards are oh so efficient, I get it. But really, when are you going to sell me 2 of them? Enough with the nonsense, Sun Woohan said, unmoved. I'm busy. Busy? Aren't you just running around looking for your sister? Jin Wushu said with a smug expression, clearly implying he knew everything. That's all you came to tell me? Sun Woohan raised an eyebrow at him. That's not enough? Jin Wushu spread his hands innocently. Sun Woohan gave a cold laugh. You've known me for years. Do you really think I'm the type of man who can't even protect his own sister? Jin Wushu rubbed his chin with 2 fingers, suddenly enlightened. So, you're already fully aware of what's happening at Clearwater Dock, huh? TSK, then tell me this. If you already knew everything, why bother putting on that performance for Lu Yuan earlier? Sun Woohan cast a sideways glance at him. None of your damn business. Well, fair enough, Jin Wushu said with a shrug. I'm just curious what your real stance on that fine Miss Lu is. Even less your business. And for the record, your news hasn't impressed me in the slightest. If that's all, you can get lost. Jin Wushu, however, was not one to be dismissed easily. Thick-skinned as ever, he waved a hand and said, No, don't be so hasty. I'm not done. What I'm about to tell you next will definitely pique your interest. But but same deal as always. He grinned, rubbing his fingers together in a money-counting gesture. Shameless miser. Sun Woohan cursed inwardly but kept a calm face. How do I know your information is worth paying for? Easy. Let me give you a hint. It's about that maid you're looking for. That caught his attention. You know where she is? Of course. But first, you've got to tell me, why are you looking for her? Jin Wushu gave him a sly look. Don't tell me you've fallen for her? Ridiculous. Sun Woohan gave him a bored glance before explaining. She was with my sister before the disappearance. Oh, that explains it. Still, I gotta say, it's a bold move to ignore a stunning beauty and chase after a maid. Are you done rambling? Where is she? Well, that I'm not entirely sure of, Jin Wushu admitted. As Sun Woohan's face darkened, he quickly added, but one of my men spotted her near Clearwater Dock. Then she vanished again. Slipped right through our fingers. Even you lose track of someone? That's new, Sun Woohan scoffed. Rub it in, why don't you? Jin Wushu grumbled. I'm still annoyed about it. That girl is no ordinary person. She actually managed to ditch my trackers. So, you think she might be working with Yushin? I don't know about that, Jin Wushu said, fishing a slip of paper from his sleeve. But she brought this to my pawnshop. The slip bore no words, only a clear imprint from a jade seal. Two bold characters stood out, Xiai, chivalry. This is, Sun Woohan narrowed his eyes. He clearly recognized the mark but didn't say it aloud. Could she be connected to Sword Manor? That? I don't know, Jin Wushu shrugged. Sun Woohan shot him a look of disdain. What kind of information seller doesn't know anything? Still, he pulled a silver note from his drawer and tossed it over. Jin Wushu caught it and immediately frowned. What? You're giving me half price? I'm a 10,000 tael man. That's all your news is worth, Sun Woohan said without remorse. You know nothing and want 10,000? 5,000 is generous. Fine, fine. 5,000 it is, Jin Wushu huffed. Anyway, I've already got someone lined up for the other 5. Oh, and who's the unlucky soul? Sun Woohan asked with a sidelong glance. Li Hanqing, Jin Wushu said with a wicked grin. Him? You really think you can pull it off? He's the leader of the Hero Alliance. Try to extort him, and you might end up hacked to pieces by one of his guest elders. Heh, don't you worry about that. I've got my ways. Is that so? Sun Woohan said with a cold smile. Well, good luck. Just don't cry when it all blows up in your face. He couldn't help feeling suspicious. Jin Wushu had never once won a match against Li Hanqing. Why the sudden confidence? Could it be that flawless hero finally had a weakness? Stop jinxing me. This time I'll succeed. You'll see. Jin Wushu raised an eyebrow with smug satisfaction. This new bargaining chip was far too interesting. He was sure Li Hanqing would pay handsomely for it. Just wait. The real show was only beginning. Li Hanqing should be at the Myriad Beasts carriage pavilion by now, right? Jin Wushu said, grinning from ear to ear. He reached for a pen holder on Sun Woohan's desk and twisted it. With a few soft clicks, a secret door opened in the wall. He stepped inside, gave a jaunty wave, and disappeared. Sun Woohan responded with a massive eye roll, then calmly reset the mechanism, sealing the passage once more. That guy, what kind of secret did he uncover this time? Smiling like a damn fox. Could it be that Li Hanqing is finally about to fall? He murmured to himself, eyes narrowing with thought. Chapter 24, The Invitation. At the horse grounds of Myriad Beasts carriage pavilion, Li Hanqing sneezed several times in a row, seemingly without cause. His attendant, Xingwen, hurried over with a cloak and said with concern, Young master, please put this on. Though summer has technically arrived, the spring chill still lingers. You've been coming and going early and late these past few days. Be careful not to catch a cold. Li Hanqing took the cloak with a gentle smile. Do I look that fragile to you? Xingwen, you're making a fuss over nothing. Young master, our duty, Xingwen's and mine, is to take care of you. If anything were to happen to you, no punishment would be enough to atone for our failure, said Xingwu solemnly from the side. All right, I understand. I'll take better care of myself, Li Hanqing said as he pulled the cloak over his shoulders. By the way, I personally picked out these horses. Make sure to record each one properly, and then inform Manager Su. I'll head back to my room for now. Yes, young master, the two attendants replied in unison, leading the horses away respectfully. Li Hanqing watched their retreating figures and shook his head. The two were loyal beyond question, but while he treated them as brothers, they could never become true confidants. It was a quiet sorrow, one he had long come to accept. At just 27, he was already the leader of the Hero Alliance, an organization that upheld the balance between light and dark within the martial world. Perhaps he stood too high. Those around him could only look up to him, never across at him. Unbidden, a pale yet indifferent face surfaced in his mind. He stopped in his tracks. How many times now? He wondered, slightly unsettled. Ever since that encounter with the girl, she kept appearing in his thoughts for no apparent reason. A strange sense of familiarity clung to him. He had never met her before, yet from the very first glance, he'd felt an inexplicable pull to approach her, to understand her. But why? He had no answer. In the end, he could only attribute it to one word, fate. Yet he had never believed in fate. Everything he possessed, his strength, his status, his influence, had been carved out by his own hands. Nothing had ever been handed to him. And yet now, when everything was supposedly under his control, peace and freedom remained elusive. Ever since meeting that girl, he'd found himself oddly yearning to talk to someone he barely even knew. He gave a bitter smile and continued walking, though now his steps felt heavier than before. After returning to his room, his dinner was delivered, but he barely touched it, only taking a few bites before asking the servants to clear the table. Lying lazily on the bed, still fully dressed, his thoughts kept circling back to that distant, aloof face. What was it about that ordinary face that pulled him in so stubbornly? Tomorrow, he would return to Sword Manor. For some some reason, the thought made him hesitate. Would he see her again? The next morning, freshly washed and dressed, Li Hanqing stepped outside. Xingwen and Xingwu were already waiting for him. Our luggage is packed, and the horses are ready. When does young master wish to depart? Asked Xingwen. Once I bid farewell to Manager Su, we'll leave. The sooner we return, the sooner I'll have peace of mind. Yes, young master. Just as the two attendants were about to take their leave, they spotted Manager Su hurrying over in the distance, his large belly bouncing with every step. His expression looked rather peculiar. Li Hanqing frowned slightly but still offered a polite smile. Manager Su, I was just about to come and bid you farewell. You've arrived at the perfect moment. You flatter me, Master Li, Manager Su panted. It wasn't foresight, I assure you. Someone brought an invitation early this morning, addressed specifically to you. I didn't dare delay and came to deliver it right away. He bowed and respectfully presented a gold-foiled invitation with both hands. Sword Pavilion Banquet? Li Hanqing frowned deeper upon seeing the gilded card. Only one person would use such an ostentatious display of wealth. What does he want this time? Opening the invitation, he read, to Master Li Hanqing of Sword Manor, you are cordially invited to a gathering at the Glutton's Pavilion. An item of importance awaits your retrieval. Awaiting your presence at noon. Do not disappoint. Jin Wushu, as expected, it's him again. Jin Wushu. Would he ever stop? Even Li Hanqing's patience had its limits. If this man didn't fleece him of some silver, he never seemed satisfied. Honestly, had he known Jin Wushu would be this persistent, he might have just given in and saved them both the trouble. He truly didn't understand the man. As the wealthiest individual in the martial world, what strange hobby had he developed to constantly play these mischievous games? Where's the person who delivered the message? Li Hanqing asked with a resigned shake of his head. A little beggar. Still waiting by the gate, Manager Su replied. Of course. Typical of Jin Wushu's style. Utterly ridiculous. Li Hanqing sighed and said, Manager Su, please give the boy 10 taels of silver and ask him to inform his employer. Li Hanqing will be there as promised. No need to go to such lengths just to reply, Manager Su protested. It's only a beggar, after all, though he wisely stopped there. He knew well that Li Hanqing treated everyone equally, regardless of rank or status. Li Hanqing only smiled in return. My young master has spoken. Just do as you're told. You think he won't cover the cost? Xingwen snapped. And no, of course not. Manager Su wiped sweat from his brow awkwardly. Li Hanqing shot Xingwen a reproachful look, then said kindly to Manager Su, Xingwen has a sharp tongue. Please don't take offense. Not at all. Not at all. Manager Su quickly waved his hands. This is the personal attendant of Li Hanqing. His status far surpasses any ordinary merchant like me. Manager Su, since I'll be attending the meeting, I must trouble you to let me stay another day. Don't mention it. It's an honor to host you even a day longer. Su bowed deeply. I'll have your belongings returned to your room, and the horses will remain in our care. Please rest assured. Thank you, Manager Su. Li Hanqing cupped his hands in gratitude. You're too kind, Master Li. I'll see to it at once. Once Manager Su had left, Xingwen frowned. Young master, are you really going to meet him? Of course, Li Hanqing nodded. But that Jin Wushu clearly has bad intentions. He's done this several times already, always showing up like a ghost. This time, he sent a formal invitation. That suggested something serious, Li Hanqing said calmly. Serious? He's probably bluffing again, trying to catch you off guard. As if that's even possible. Xingwen's disdain for Jin Wushu was obvious. He couldn't stand how the man constantly targeted his master. We'll find out soon enough. Li Hanqing added, have Xingwu accompany me. You stay here and make the preparations. Once we return, we'll set out for the manor. Very well, young master. Xingwen wanted to insist on going, but remembering that Xingwu was too clumsy to handle arrangements, he relented. Li Hanqing and Xingwu left the pavilion and dined at a quiet restaurant before stopping by Jisui Pavilion, a famed jewelry shop whose owner was none other than Jin Wushu himself. As they stepped inside, Xingwu opened his mouth as if to say something but held back. Li Hanqing smirked inwardly. Good thing I didn't bring Xingwen. He'd be nagging the whole way. He selected a few exquisite pieces of jewelry, each of significant value. Xingwu knew these were gifts for the women back at Sword Manor. Every time the young master traveled, he never returned empty-handed. Over the years, it had become a quiet tradition. Still, he didn't understand. If the master cared so much, why hadn't he married any of them? Li Hanqing was well aware of the question on everyone's mind, but only he knew this was all he could offer them. As for the rest, their deeper hopes and dreams, he had no way to fulfill them. At checkout, the pavilion's manager was all smiles, recognizing Li Hanqing as a distinguished regular. Jin Wushu had personally explained to his staff the identities of the 8 powerhouses of the martial world. These were not people to offend lightly, and of them, Li Hanqing ranked first. While resting at a nearby tea house, Xingwu finally broke his silence. Young master, there's something I can't quite understand. May I speak freely? Li Hanqing raised an eyebrow. Go on. That man Jin has caused you nothing but trouble, yet you still frequent his Jisui Pavilion? He doesn't even recognize your goodwill. Frankly, it's just not worth it. Xingwu blurted it all out like a long-held breath. That sounds like something Xingwen told you to say, Li Hanqing said with a knowing smile. Before leaving, he'd seen Xingwen whispering in Xingwu's ear. Xingwu flushed red but stubbornly replied, no, it's from the bottom of my heart. From the bottom of your heart? Li Hanqing smiled again. These two had followed him since childhood, Xingwen the clever one, Xingwu the quiet strength, but their hearts beat as one. Xingwu was clumsy with words and relied on his brother for expression. Most likely, Xingwen had coached him on this very speech. Xingwu, forget what Xingwen thinks for a moment. Do you believe I'm doing the wrong thing? I think it puts you at a disadvantage, Xingwu muttered after a long pause. The sparkle in Li Hanqing's eyes dimmed slightly and finally faded into a quiet sigh. He turned his gaze to the street outside the tea house. People bustled by, laughter and chatter filling the air. So lively, yet why did he feel so profoundly alone? Chapter 25, The Ambush Banquet. It is a rare blessing to find a true kindred spirit in this lifetime. Li Hanqing understood this all too well. For someone like him, seeking a companion who truly understood and cherished him was no easy task. And yet, throughout the years, he had quietly nurtured that small hope in his heart. Even now, though he had yet to find someone he could confide in without reservation, he wasn't ready to give up on the search. Among the people he had come to know, there were a few worthy of deeper friendship. Jin Wushu, whom he was about to meet today, was one such person. Jin Wushu, widely recognized as the wealthiest man in the martial world and the city lord of Taozhou City. Though he didn't own many industries, every venture he touched turned to gold, stirring envy in all who knew of him. Yet he remained an oddity. Despite sitting atop mountains of gold and silver, he rarely tended to his treasury at the Taozhou Guild. Instead, he roamed the realm freely, digging into other secrets and vulnerabilities, turning gossip into gold. He refused to trade for anything less than 10,000 taels, making him a notorious profiteer and a walking encyclopedia. Strangely enough, there was very little in the martial world that escaped his notice. 3 years ago, their first encounter had been over something utterly trivial, so minor that Li Hanqing had forgotten it by the afternoon of the same day. Yet, that inconsequential incident had sparked Jin Wushu's relentless pestering ever since, as if he were determined to dig up dirt on him, refusing to rest until he succeeded. Li Hanqing shook his head with a wry smile. To this day, he still didn't know what he'd done to offend the man. Or perhaps, just perhaps, he hadn't done anything at all. Jin Wushu had simply chosen him as a target, and the reason was entirely irrelevant. Unable to make sense of it, Li Hanqing could only laugh it off, since there was no real enmity between them. He never took it to heart. On the contrary, Jin Wushu's meddling had become an occasional diversion in his otherwise monotonous life. Of course, others failed to see it that way. Several elders within the Hero Alliance had long urged action against the Taozhou Guild, but Li Hanqing had firmly refused. "It's a personal matter," he had said. "It has nothing to do with the alliance." As for the constant chatter of those around him, he let it slide. Only Gu Xingwen, who served closest to him, took it upon himself to nag about it frequently. No one else dared. This time, Jin Wushu's invitation was unusually formal, almost suspiciously so. What had he discovered this time? Li Hanqing had spent the last 6 months holed up in Sword-bearing City and had only just arrived in Qianma City. What could have possibly happened in so short a time? Raising his gaze, he looked upon the opulently decorated Glutton's Pavilion, the location specified in the invitation. He gave a faint smile, brushed his idle thoughts aside, and stepped through the grand doors. No sooner had he entered than a man stepped forward to greet him. Clad in a reddish-brown robe, the middle-aged man bowed deeply and said with a beaming smile, "Master Li, your visit brings light to our humble halls. Please forgive us for not welcoming you sooner." "You're too kind," Li Hanqing replied with a polite smile. He recognized this man as Jin Guang, master of the Glutton's Pavilion and one of Jin Wushu's most trusted aides. The pavilion was renowned for gathering gourmet delicacies from across the land, and Jin Guang himself was no ordinary figure. "Please, Master Li, allow me to escort you to the third-floor private suite. My lord has been waiting for quite some time." Jin Guang gestured warmly. Li Hanqing simply nodded and followed without further pleasantries. Accompanied by Gu Xingwu, he was led to a private chamber on the 3rd floor. Jin Guang opened the door and said with a smile, "Master Li, please enter." "I'll take my leave." "Much appreciated," Li Hanqing replied, smiling in kind. He and Gu Xingwu stepped into the room. A faint, elegant scent of fruit greeted them. The room was already set with an exquisitely arranged meal, but the most eye-catching feature was the large platter of golden-hued longevity fruit, a perfect match for the man seated at the head of the table, dressed in a shimmering golden robe, Jin Wushu himself. Li Hanqing couldn't help but smile inwardly. Jin Wushu clearly had a deep obsession with the color yellow. Not only did he wear gold from head to toe, even his utensils, fruits, wine, and food were all in shades of yellow. It was enough to dazzle the eyes. "Brotherly, always punctual as promised. Come, sit, sit. I've been waiting here so long I nearly grew roots." Jin Wushu greeted him with exaggerated warmth, as if welcoming an old friend to a reunion. But Gu Xingwu, standing behind Li Hanqing, silently scoffed. "What schemes lie beneath that smiling mask? I take it there's something important you wish to discuss, Jin brother. You sent an invitation of such formality. No need for ceremony, just speak your mind," Li Hanqing said directly, skipping all niceties. "No rush, no rush. Rare as it is to have you here at my Glutton's Pavilion, at least let me offer a drink first. Come now, try this newly brewed golden wine. You there, pour a full cup for Master Li," Jin Wushu said, his eyes gleaming with mischief. At his command, a young servant stepped forward and filled Li Hanqing's golden goblet. The liquor poured like strands of silk, fine and luminous. Li Hanqing suddenly felt as if he were surrounded by molten gold. Half-jokingly, he wondered, could this wine be made from real gold? He raised the cup and took a small sip. The taste was surprisingly smooth and mellow, nothing like the harsh spirits favored by most wanderers of the martial world. Still, he suspected that rugged men would find this too tame, after all. They usually preferred something spicier, something that burned all the way down. "Well, what do you think of my wine?" Jin Wushu asked, eyes gleaming with pride. "That depends entirely on where you intend to sell it," Li Hanqing said, placing the cup down with a smile. "In places like Yufeng City or Yuntian City, I fear your wine would be thrown out before anyone took a second sip." Jin Wushu clicked his tongue. "Ugh, don't remind me. A bunch of uncultured brutes. Giving this to them would be like pouring pearls before swine. No, no, I brewed this especially for Fengya City." "Fengya City?" Li Hanqing raised an eyebrow. "Don't tell me Ji Wushuang is still refusing to let you open a branch of Glutton's Pavilion there, so you're trying to bribe him with this wine?" "Partly, yes, but I don't plan to serve only him," Jin Wushu chuckled. "That beautiful man is far too picky. If I want to earn his silver, I'll have to put in extra effort." As expected, it all came down to money. Li Hanqing shook his head with a chuckle. Every move this man made revolved around profit. Clearly, this meeting was not simply about food or catching up. This wine wasn't just for show, it was a statement. If Jin Wushu sets his mind to it, there's no silver he can't earn, not even yours, Li Hanqing. The wines tasted. "Shall we get to the point now?" Li Hanqing asked, his tone calm but sharp. He had a sinking feeling that this time, he might truly have to bleed a little. Jin Wushu finally set down his cup and straightened in his seat. With rare seriousness, he asked, "Brotherly, is it true that the Hero Alliance possesses two sacred relics, the Chivalry Record and the Jade Emblem of Valor, that are rarely shown to the world?" "Everyone in the martial world knows that," Li Hanqing replied flatly. "What of it?" "I've also heard," Jin Wushu continued, "that the Chivalry Record contains the entire history of the Alliance and is for the eyes of the leader only. And the Jade Emblem, there are only 3 in existence. One is always carried by you, while the other 2 remain locked away at Sword Manor. Am I correct?" Li Hanqing said nothing, only smiled faintly. But in his heart, he was astonished. Jin Wushu's intelligence network has become frighteningly accurate. The Alliance holds sway across the martial world, Jin Wushu went on. These 2 relics symbolize its authority. Naturally, they're never shown lightly. Most people will never even catch a glimpse. He paused and glanced at Li Hanqing's impassive face, then continued with deliberate weight, but as luck would have it, I recently had the honor of seeing one for myself. Li Hanqing's hand, resting calmly by his side, trembled almost imperceptibly. The Jade Emblem? Could it be her? That day, when they first met, she had suddenly gifted him the emblem. Though reckless, he hadn't regretted it, until Gu Xingwen's relentless nagging made him reconsider. Had something happened to her? A shadow passed across his face. "What exactly are you implying, Jin brother?" he asked, voice low, unease rising. Jin Wushu's eyes sparkled with amusement. With a wave, he dismissed the attendants. Moments later, one returned carrying a lacquered golden box and placed it carefully between them. "Brotherly, would you mind solving a little mystery for me?" Jin Wushu asked with a smile, nudging the box forward. Li Hanqing looked at him, said nothing, and opened the box. Inside lay the Jade Emblem of Valor, unmistakably real. Beneath it rested a folded piece of paper. He picked it up, unfolded it, and froze. It was a pawn slip. The sacred emblem, worth more than gold, had been pawned for 50 taels. 50 taels. Clearly written at the bottom was the name of the person who pawned it, Pian Ran. So that's her name, Li Hanqing thought. How fitting. Pian Ran, graceful and aloof, just like her. "Tell me, brotherly," Jin Wushu leaned in. "Is this a fake? Or did someone really toss away such a priceless relic like trash?" Li Hanqing answered quietly, "It's real." Inside, he was speechless, but his years of discipline allowed him to remain outwardly composed. Gu Xingwu, on the other hand, was visibly fuming, face flushed, breath heavy. Li Hanqing folded the pawn slip and returned it to the box. Then he picked up the Jade Emblem and said, "It is indeed the Hero Alliance's relic. Since you've shown it to me, Jin brother, you must be fairly certain of its authenticity. No need for further probing, just name your price." Jin Wushu beamed. At last! After all these years, Li Hanqing had finally lost face to him. It was delicious. "You're as forthright as ever, brotherly. I know you visited Jisui Pavilion earlier, and I'm no unreasonable man. Let's say, 5,000 taels. Consider it me doing you a favor." Li Hanqing nodded, pulled out 5 silver notes, and placed them on the table. But Jin Wushu wasn't done. His eyes gleamed with mischief as he asked, "By the way, what's your relationship with the girl who pawned it?" "That is a personal matter," Li Hanqing replied with a courteous but distant smile. "If there's nothing else, I'll take my leave. No need to rush. Why not stay and drink with me a while?" Jin Wushu was in a great mood, but apparently oblivious to the fact that he had just extorted his guest. "Your kind offer is